3 opponents running. There is 1 seat open. We're going to do a little housekeeping, gentlemen. We will have 5 minutes to speak. I'll be sitting over here, and at the last minute I will stand up, and at 5 minutes I will pull you off the podium. So just to give you the heads up. At the end of all 3 opponents, as you speak, just have a seat behind us, and then at the end we will open it to the floor for questions and answers. And hopefully the Rotarians have brought all their questions. We will be going in order. The first person, and hold up from coming up yet, is not in our attendance, but he did send a representative. That's David Joyce. He's our incumbent. Bill Romer will be speaking on his behalf. The second candidate is David Macco, and the third candidate is Michael Wager. Thank you. I'm a builder, so I'm used to Wagner Homes. Yes, sorry. At this time, if you'd please welcome Bill Romer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bill Romer. I represent you on Summit County Council as a county council member at large. I had the opportunity to be here just last week because I am running for re-election. As of this weekend, I got a call from Congressman Joyce. The congressman in February had accepted an opportunity to speak to the Middlefield Chamber of Commerce. So I believe it's Middlefield, Burton, Chardon, and those communities. He had made that commitment, like I said, in the middle of February. So he asked me to come to just speak very briefly on his behalf. He wanted to be here. He spoke last year, and he said if he's fortunate enough to be reelected, he will promise to come next year. I had an opportunity to first meet Dave almost immediately after he was sworn into office. He and I had gotten together because he wanted to hear what the issues were facing the residents of Summit County. As a county council person, I travel around the county. I represent all 31 communities. I spend an inordinate amount of time here in the Nordonia Hills area, and Dave wanted to really pick my brain. What we did is we had a couple other elected officials come. We met at Panera for several hours so that he was aware of the issues. The congressman has been a prosecutor in Geauga County for over 20 years. He was elected 2 years ago. He's running for re-election. But he wanted to make sure that he knew the issues that we're facing with the residents in Summit County. I feel, I have to say this, I did not necessarily agree with 100% of Dave's platform, but I do agree that he does an excellent job representing the constituents here in Summit County. In looking at his background, he's got a law degree from the University of Dayton. I've met his wife, I've met his family. I have his personal cell, I have his personal email, because when I have issues, I feel very comfortable going directly to him. He did ask me to mention a couple things that he's worked on. He is on the House Appropriations Committee. It's a very powerful committee that deals very specifically with budgets. His finance, his legal background enable him to do an effective job there. 2 things that he's worked on a bipartisan basis. The first is a bill that was signed into office that eases the travel abilities of wounded veterans. He and a freshman congressman from Hawaii authored the bill. It was passed. It makes it easier for those that have lost limbs, that have metallic implants and things like that, to travel through TSA. The other thing that he wanted to make everyone aware of, that I feel very strongly about also, is the Great Lakes. Funding had been cut significantly for improvements in the Great Lakes. He was able to work on a bipartisan basis with a number of other congressmen to add significant funding to that. That's one of our biggest resources. It lends jobs, it lends recreation. I love personally to fish, and it really benefited Northeast Ohio. From a fiscal perspective, he is very fiscally conservative. He wanted me to let you know that he returned over 8% of his budget, about $100,000 of the budget that he's allotted to spend as a congressman. That was a continuation of what he had done when he was Geauga County prosecutor. On an annual basis, he always returned a portion of his budget. He didn't spend his full budget because he believes, like I do, that you need to be fiscally conservative. I've had an opportunity to meet him on numerous occasions. I am supporting him in this election, and I just want to make people aware of that. If you have any questions, you can refer them to me, I can refer to him, or however you want to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, and our next candidate is David Macko. David?
I'm David Macko, the Libertarian candidate for Congress. If I am elected, I promise never to vote to increase your taxes, never to vote to impose new taxes, and I will promise to try to oppose the invisible inflation tax. I will support the Constitution of the United States 100% of the time, and I will always work to restore our liberties. Our country faces many serious problems. Oh yes, I will also promise to do what no member of the House of Representatives has done, not even the better ones, to vote to impeach Barack Obama for treason, war crimes, murder, trying to destroy the Constitution and set up a police state. We face many problems. They fall into three categories, basically. First, we need to end the police state. We need to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. We need to get rid of the FBI, the CIA, and have only one transparent constitutional national agency to protect us from most of the enemies which our government has created over the last century. We need to restore the right to keep and bear arms. If there is a real terrorist threat, we should have the right of the American people to protect themselves. I want to abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I want to repeal all federal gun laws. Mao Zedong said that power grows out of the barrel of a gun, and our founding fathers agreed, which is why we have the Second Amendment, which says no infringement. I don't believe we should have taxes on weapons or ammunition. We need to stop World War III. We need to bring all of our troops home now. We need to sell all of our foreign bases. We need to stop foreign aid. Like most federal programs, domestic and international, it is unconstitutional, it is harmful, it creates enemies on both sides, and we are broke, plus almost $18 trillion, and that's only the tip of the dead iceberg. Some of the troops need to be brought to our southern border, where Obama has greatly increased the invasion which is taking place. I support President Eisenhower's program of 1954, the historic term of which was Operation Wetback. We need Operation Wetback 2 so that we will encourage all of the illegal aliens to go home. This can be done without violating the rights of the American people. If necessary, we should put troops on the border. If necessary, we should build a wall. But whatever we do, we should not use it as an excuse to deprive us of more of our liberties. That's the most important thing. We need to get out of the Depression. Oh, where is my timekeeper here? Okay. We need to get out of the Depression. First of all, we should support the Liberty Amendment. That would require the federal government to sell all of its million square miles of land and property held unconstitutionally, and other businesses, so that in 3 years the federal income, death, and gift taxes could be repealed. The average American worker would have a permanent 20% pay increase. That would start getting us out of the Depression. We also need to audit the Federal Reserve System, which the greatest living American statesman, Dr. Ron Paul, proposed. Once we audit it and find out where our money went and who stole it to the greatest extent possible, we should abolish the Fed and restore honest gold and silver money, which the government cannot create out of nothing. I favor the repeal of Obamacare. This is as I was asked yesterday at the City Club how I could improve it, I said it can't be improved. It's like Ebola, you just get rid of it. Again, we need to return to the Constitution. If it's not authorized by Article 1, Section 8, and if it is forbidden by the 9th and 10th Amendments, as are 90%, excuse me, as are 90% of the activities of the federal government. We should stop it now and restore the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next candidate is Michael Wagner. Michael.
Thank you. Thanks to the Rotarians and to all of you for being here today. Thanks for Mayor Kupka for also taking the time to share with me some observations about issues confronting Macedonia and more broadly this area of the 14th District. So I'm a first-time candidate, and you probably don't know a lot about me, but I felt it important to be here with you and share it with you directly, and I appreciate the fact that Dave Macko joined me. I also appreciate the fact that Dave Macko is a direct and authentic guy. It's not been my experience with the incumbent. Dave Macko and I have been on podiums together dozens of times, oftentimes just the two of us. Because I think it's important that whether you're going to agree with what I have to say now or disagree, that you really deserve to know what I stand for. So let me give you a little overview about how it is I'm running for United States Congress. I'm a 63-year-old lawyer, small businessman, and educator. I've been a partner with downtown Cleveland law firms for decades now. I've been a small business owner with members of my family and partners, including a chain of bakeries you may have heard of along the way called Cinnabon. And yes, I can bake a cinnamon roll. And learned a little bit about wages and operating businesses as well. And I'm a member of the adjunct faculty at Case Western Reserve. I teach policy courses in the political science department. And I did not expect to be a candidate at this stage of my life. But, like you, I've observed things that concern me. But having said that, why would I disrupt my otherwise quiet personal professional life to want to run for United States Congress and join what we all observe in Washington, D.C.? Well, I think it's more than just a talking point of dysfunction. There are too many people in the United States Congress, and Dave Joyce is not unique among them, and they're not all Republicans. This is on both sides of the partisan aisle, who go there, do very little, sometimes do things which are counterproductive to the interest of most Americans, and come back here and tell you nice stories and homilies and are nice guys or women. But there are really serious issues confronting this nation. Over a period of decades, the American middle class has been embattled. We have a tax code that only works for those of us that have effective lobbyists in Capitol Hill. So unless you're a large corporation or a very wealthy American represented by very effective lobbyists, it isn't working for you. The last 2 days, another Northeastern Ohio corporation announced it's going to do what's called a corporate inversion. It's going to reincorporate in the UK so it doesn't have to pay U.S. corporate income taxes. What happens? That share of that burden gets distributed to middle-class taxpayers. It's the second large Northeastern Ohio corporation that's undertaken this. Now, this particular corporation gave both Dave Joyce and I contributions, campaign contributions. I announced today I'd be donating mine to the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. And I don't blame the management. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Maximizing corporate profits is actually their obligation as fiduciary to their shareholders. I blame the United States Congress. There are a broad spectrum of issues which are unaddressed in this nation because of partisan divide and because people are going to the United States Congress and thinking about their re-election and their political careers. I don't need a job. I want to serve. And I implore you, I beseech you today to ask us, Dave Macko and I, and even Dave Joyce's representative, if he would like to stand forth and answer, the hard questions, what we stand for, why we stand for them, what we'll do, our personal and professional histories. There are unanswered questions in Dave Joyce's professional history. He was asked about them yesterday at the City Club, and he refused to answer. You need to ask the hard questions of those of us that are here, and in absentia, those of us that are not. As voters, you deserve to know. And on November 4th, or during this early voting period, whether you decide to vote for me or not, you'll have no ambiguity. about why I'm standing in front of you and why I want to serve in the 114th Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. At this time, we're going to open up for questions on the floor. If we have anybody, yes, John. And before you ask that question, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to come up in reverse order and come to the podium to answer your questions, and if you can keep your answers brief. Thank you.
Dave, just like, I won't speak on policy. If there's something relative to, Summit County that the congressman had discussed, that I would
Okay.
feel free to discuss, but I would not ever purport to speak for policy for Congressman Joyce.
Okay. John?
So when I argue against the Ohio ballot initiative for medical marijuana, I say the agency that should test whether marijuana is good for anything or not is the FDA. They should figure out what the dosage should be. They should figure if it's good for anything. They should monitor its production. But Congress doesn't allow the FDA to test marijuana. They don't know, so we don't know if it's good for anything because Congress refuses to allow it to use science. It's using its political bias. It's allowing OxyContin, but it's not allowing a decision to be made, an intelligent decision on marijuana. So like whack-a-mole, all across the United States, ill-equipped states are allowing medical marijuana. It's being misused. And when is Congress going to get its head straight on this issue and allow the testing of marijuana to find out what it can be used for, if anything?
This is going to be an issue where Dave Macko and I are going to come out in substantially the same place. And thank you for the question. That was not planted by me, but I'm so glad you asked it. It came up yesterday in the City Club debate with another perspective about the overcrowding of U.S. prisons. Let's face a difficult issue. The use of marijuana proliferates in our society. It may be good or bad for you, we don't really know. I am not a proponent for smoking marijuana, pot, or whatever you want to call it, but I am standing here before you as a person that's a serious policy observer and wants to be a serious legislator. We need the federal government to do its job. You're right. We've got 50 states, and those several states now are undertaking in various degrees complete legalization of the use of marijuana or the use for medical purposes across over 23 states now. This is not the way you legislate a national issue. Now, do I think that the overcrowding of prisons for drug offenses of marijuana use is a bad use of our resources and makes us a country with a greater percentage of our population incarcerated by all but the most egregious totalitarian nations like North Korea? Yeah, I think it's a problem. But it's not because I'm a proponent for pot smoking. It's because I'm a serious legislator. I want the U.S. Congress to do its work on this from the perspective of what are its benefits or its detriments. Tell the American people, and don't let Colorado decide that it's okay while you're there on ski vacation that you can smoke marijuana, but it's not in Ohio. Let's have uniform policy undertaken by a serious and engaged Congress. Thank you.
As a libertarian and as a supporter of the Constitution of the United States and as a rational human being, I favor the repeal of all federal drug laws. The Constitution does not authorize them, and they have created a horrible drug war, which, as one of my opponents has stated, has filled our prisons. We have more people in prison than Red China. We need to abolish all the federal gun laws, the drug laws too, of course. As for the states, the state should also abolish their drug laws. If you're 18 years old and not under some disability, such as guardianship, it should be your right to decide what you take into your body. For the record, I do not use marijuana or other substances of that sort. I don't want to change my personality. I like it as it is.
Okay. At this time, we're open for another question. Yes, Dan?
Yes. First of all, I know how old Mr. Wigger is because he told us. Mr. Macko, how old are you?
72. If you choose to elect me, you don't have to worry about term limits. If I should choose to want to stay there too long, if I didn't term limit myself, God probably would.
Very good. I know how old Mr. Romer is, because he and I have talked before. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but just in this city, Macedonia, according to the 2010 census, there were over 1,100 veterans who live in this city. That doesn't include Twinsburg, or Northfield Township, or Northfield Village, or Sagamore Hills, or Boston Heights for that matter. There are over 1,100 just here. There are many of us veterans who do believe in everything, a lot of things that Mr. Macko said. We are in favor of those kind of things because we are what is known as national security and national protection. If everything else fails, they will call us up and they will utilize us, which we expect. But we do believe that the veterans in this country are not getting their fair due. There are a lot of programs, and Mr. Joyce has given a lot of different rules and regulations to help us. But I do believe that there's much more that can be done, and I can't think of another outfit that deserves it more. Thank you.
May I address that?
Sure.
Look, as I tried to tell you, I really want you to know who I am and what I stand for. There will never be a candidate for U.S. Congress that will stand in front of you and say that they don't support veterans. It's just not what they're going to do. I've not served, but I am the son of a World War II veteran, a 91-year-old Navy aviator, and I've listened to my father talk about his engagement and the benefits he's gotten from the Veterans Administration. But there is a difference between talking about it and your actions. And it's not just about the failings of the VA in Phoenix, which is regrettable, but there are actually people in the United States Congress, and a lot of them are Republicans, who think that the VA is just another social welfare department and don't see it as having a special mission. And if you all are familiar with that document known as the Ryan budget, which my opponent Dave Joyce voted for every year he was asked to in the U.S. Congress, it's not truly a budget anyway. It's really more of a polemic or a political statement. Actually, Dave Joyce referred to it as a vision statement. It's a vision of America I hope we never see, because within it are significant cuts to programs which affect in a disproportionate manner veterans and also seniors. But you asked me about veterans, and that's why I'll stay on point. It would cut funding for the Veterans Administration, significant funding for the Veterans Administration. It would cut Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, you might notice food stamps, one of the largest groups of beneficiaries in food stamps, and this is a national scandal. One of the largest groups of beneficiaries for food stamps in our nation are veterans. That's in the Ryan budget. That's why I say, ask the hard questions. I stand second to none in understanding that we live in a dangerous world, and national security is what you do first, so you have the liberty, as Dave Macko might say, but so would I, the liberty to have the kind of debates we're having here. And we have the liberty and the luxury to talk about how we want to have an expenditure policy in our budget and a tax policy to support it. But if we're going to ask people to defend our nation, and they're asking again now to defend our nation against the Islamic State, then let's have a real discussion about what happens when these veterans come home. And by the way, on this last point about defending our nation, as we're here just before the midterm elections, and this Congress, the 113th, is in recess again, as it's been most of the last 15 weeks, 10 out of 15 weeks in recess, we're talking about going to war. And we should perhaps engage against a very dangerous and different kind of enemy. But as David Macko knows, Article 1 of the Constitution requires Congress to declare war. This U.S. Congress should be back in session now, debating this important issue. The administration should have to make their case for what our mission is, what our national interest is, and what our exit will be when we're finished before we commit American lives and American taxpayer dollars. That's serious discussion and serious debate, and that's how we should honor our veterans.
I served in the U.S. Army from 1966 to 1968, but I never went to Vietnam. The Veterans Administration is a constitutional function of the federal government. They should uphold contracts with veterans, and especially to take care of all war-related injuries, especially the stresses caused by being sent over and over into these useless foreign wars which have done nothing to protect us. Furthermore, regarding the Veterans Administration, I believe it should be put back under the control of the Department of Defense so you could court-martial the people who are killing veterans. I believe there should also be vouchers for veterans so they can go to private hospitals. There is one bright aspect of this horrible VA tragedy. It shows how the American people will be treated in all of their health care if Obamacare is not repealed. Regarding war, I will never vote, if I'm elected, I will never vote to declare war unless it is to protect the American people here at home or the Bill of Rights.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and I ask you to be brief on your response. Do we have another question? Well, not, yes, Sylvia.
Actually a two-parter. If you don't have time, you can only answer one. I'd like them to outline what they think the pluses and minuses of the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. And second, what is their view of the importance of controlling expenditure and balancing the budget?
Well, as I stated yesterday at the City Club when I was asked to give the good points of Obamacare, it's an impossible question to answer. It's like telling the good points of Ebola. There are none. It should be exterminated. Yes, we should balance the budget. Yes, we should try to get rid of as much of the deficit as possible. We should consider the possibility of official repudiation. Of course, we're repudiating it every day when the Federal Reserve System creates more money out of nothing. Yeah, if we do not stop the current economic situation, we're going to have a collapse, probably unprecedented in our history. So we definitely need to take care of that.
First part of the question, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. I think that there are elements of it which are important advances, not the least of it being that we provide more coverage for more people in this country. We're a country of great bounty. I would like to see that Americans, all Americans, have affordable access to health care. But it's legislation, and it came through the United States Congress, and therefore it's a patchwork. It's a half measure. I would view it as incremental progress on things like covering pre-existing conditions, allowing in an environment of slow economic growth that your adult child can stay in your policy until that person is 26, making certain that the premiums between men and women for health care are not different because women have different medical needs that are sometimes more costly, and sharing that burden between gender as Americans. And then finally, that there's not a lifetime cap on your coverage. The whole notion of an insurance pool is to spread risk. Good drivers end up paying premiums because there's bad drivers, and we all understand that. So we need to, and healthcare is significantly more important, in my view, than being able to operate your car. So I would suggest to you that spreading risk for healthcare is an important American idea. Now, with regard to the cost of it, you asked more broadly about budgets and deficits. I speak to you directly. In the 225-plus year experiment in American democracy, we've had very few years as a republic where we've balanced our budget. From the time of Washington, we have had budget deficits. The question, and those have been used for investment in the long term. And the question is, what do you do with that investment? Well, we've made poor investments when we've overspent on programs for which there's no return. As I was discussing earlier today with Mayor Kukta, long-term investments in infrastructure are critically needed in America. And those are the kind of investments that pay back over the long term and put people to work. But with regard to the notion, as my opponent Dave Joyce would say, you need to go to Washington and reduce public debt, but you can't reduce public debt unless you have surplus. And if we were to run surplus now, having revenues in excess of expenditures, you would see cuts in programs that every person in this room would be concerned about or a level of taxation would be unbearable. So let's at least have serious and honest discussion. We've had public debt as a nation since Andrew Jackson. It's a question of how big our deficits are and how big our economy is. And any serious economist or legislator knows that. But unfortunately, and I know you want me to be brief, it doesn't reduce to a soundbite. So do you want serious and honest discussion by seriously engaged legislators who understand policy and economics, or do you want sound bites that fit well in a 30-second TV ad? I'd like to be the serious legislator I think you deserve. Thank you.
This time I'd like to thank the 14th District Congressional Representatives for coming. And I'm going to turn the meeting back over to our President, Mr. Klingenberg.